Be going through Florida. We'll be going to Kansas City. We'll be coming to Minneapolis and many places. Just check our website at democracynow.org. We'll also be going throughout Ohio, to the University of Ohio. We'll be going to Columbus. And Juan, that's where we're going right now to talk to our next guest.
Yes, well, 30 years ago this Saturday, the 3 Mile Island nuclear reactor in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania malfunctioned, sparking a meltdown that resulted in the release of radioactivity. It was the worst nuclear accident in U.S. history. In the pre-dawn hours of March 28, 1979, the cooling system of 3 Mile Island's Unit 2 reactor malfunctioned, causing temperatures inside to skyrocket. Without water to cool them, more than half of the reactor's 36,000 nuclear fuel rods ruptured. Lieutenant Governor William Scranton first appeared on local TV and told residents there was no need to evacuate, but advised all citizens within 10 miles of the plant to stay indoors with their windows closed. Pennsylvania Governor Richard Thornburg then evacuated pregnant women and small children living within 5 miles of the plant. Some estimate that well over 100,000 people fled Harrisburg and the surrounding areas. The evening of March 28, 1979, famed news anchor Walter Cronkite opened his nightly newscast on CBS by calling the disaster, quote, the first step in a nuclear nightmare. For the next 4 days, the nation and the world feared a full-scale meltdown would follow. This is an excerpt of Cronkite's broadcast on March 30th.
Good evening. The world has never known a day quite like today. It faced the considerable uncertainties and dangers of the worst nuclear power plant accident of the atomic age. And the horror tonight is that it could get much worse. It is not an atomic explosion that is feared. The experts say that is impossible. But the specter was raised of perhaps the next most serious kind of nuclear catastrophe, a massive release of radioactivity. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission cited that possibility with an announcement that, while it is not likely, the potential is there for the ultimate risk of a meltdown at the 3 Mile Island atomic power plant outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
The accident at 3 Mile Island fueled the nuclear debate in this country that continues to rage to this day. We're joined now by Democracy Now! Video stream by anti-nuclear activist and editor of nukefree.org, Harvey Wasserman. Harvey, welcome to Democracy Now! On this eve of the 30th anniversary of 3 Mile Island, what do you think it's most important for people to understand? There's some people listening right now who weren't even born in 1979.
What's important to understand is that people were killed in this accident. The nuclear industry continues to spread the lie that no one was harmed. In fact, nobody knows how much radiation escaped from 3 Mile Island. Nobody knows where it went. And nobody knows what the impact was. I went into the central Pennsylvania area a year after the accident, and I conducted dozens of interviews with people who were clearly harmed by the radiation from the accident. There were cancers, leukemias, birth defects, stillbirths, hair loss, unexplained lesions, rashes. It was like being in the middle of a post-Hiroshima nightmare. And the reality is that the nuclear industry continues to deny that anyone was harmed, and all the serious indicators show that, in fact, people were harmed. There's a 2,400 person, or family rather, class action lawsuit that was filed in the 1980s that's still pending. The federal court system will not allow the people of central Pennsylvania to have an official hearing on the health impacts of this accident. And yet the industry, which wants to build new reactors, continues to spread the lie that no one was killed at 3 Mile Island. It's utterly false.
Harvey, I was a young reporter, actually, at the Philadelphia Daily News in 1979 when the accident occurred, and I remember vividly the debates in the newsroom among the reporters as to whether they would want to go and cover because they had to travel to 3 Mile Island, which was about a couple of hours drive away. And the thing that struck me most was the lesson I learned, the greatest lesson I learned, is that in major accidents, crises like this, you cannot depend on government officials to tell you the truth, because they kept changing the story day after day as to the nature of the release. And as you say, there's still not a clear sense of what the extent of the release was. What has been the continuing health effects on on the communities closest to the accident, as far as you can tell?
Well, in fact, there's just been 2 new studies released in Harrisburg this week. One indicates that as much as 100 times more radiation escaped than the government and the industry have been willing to admit. And the other is that these statistics clearly show ongoing problems of cancer, leukemia, other radiation-related diseases. The fact of the matter is that the country, this is the best known, the most infamous industrial accident in U.S. history, and yet the industry and the government refuse to get to the bottom of the situation. You should count yourself lucky that you didn't go there. Many journalists who did go to central Pennsylvania suffered significant harm. The radiation releases were very, very significant. And in fact, Walter Cronkite was wrong. The experts said there was no possibility of an explosion. There was a possibility of an explosion because there was a hydrogen bubble inside the reactor. So the accident at 3 Mile Island is ongoing. We will never have closure until the people who sued, the central Pennsylvanians, the 2,400 families, get a day in court. The federal courts still say that not enough radiation was released to cause any harm, but they don't know how much radiation was released. In fact, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has admitted they don't know how much radiation was released, and they certainly don't know where it went. And every indication is that the health damage was significant and the people were killed at 3 Mile Island.
Harvey Wasserman, we last had you on I'm looking at our website, February 5th, 2009. We had you on to talk about the coalition of environmental groups that were calling on senators to remove a controversial provision from the $900 billion stimulus bill that could lead to the construction of a new generation of nuclear power plants. That actually was taken out. What happened?
We won that 3 separate times. 3 times the industry has come in demanding a $50 billion advance bailout, a blank check from the taxpayers to fund new nuclear plants, and we beat them with the help of Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid 3 times, but there's still $18.5 billion left over from the Bush administration and the industry to do loan guarantees, and the industry is going to come in again and again. After all these years, the nuclear power industry cannot get private financing to build new nuclear plants. They cannot get private insurance to guarantee against an accident like 3 Mile Island. And then now that the Yucca Mountain waste dump has essentially been canceled, after a half century, there is no place for the high-level nuclear radioactive waste to go from nuclear power plants. It's a catastrophe, and yet this industry continues to push itself and to claim a nuclear renaissance. What they're now doing is they've gone into states like Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas, demanding that ratepayers pay for new reactors before they're even built. And you know, so this is an ongoing struggle, and at the heart of it is what happened at 3 Mile Island and the continued denial of this industry of what really happened, which is massive radiation releases and death and other harm to people in the area and, of course, to the local animals.
Harvey Wasserman, what does President Obama's support for nuclear power actually mean? And also, you mentioned Georgia. The Georgia Public Service Commission approved earlier this month 2 additional nuclear reactors for Georgia Power, which is this the first time nuclear power plants will be built in some 30 years?
Yes, and well, we think we're going to stop them. As I said, we've stopped the $50 billion. I want to mention that the reactor containment at 3 Mile Island was actually thicker than most others because citizen action prior to the construction of the plant demanded a thicker containment because the 3 Mile Island Unit 2 is right in the flight path of the Harrisburg airport. Had that not happened, we might well have had an explosion at 3 Mile Island. And today, we are continuing to fight these new reactors. I think ultimately we can stop them, but it requires full information to the general public. People have to know what really happened at 3 Mile Island and have to understand that we have stopped the nuclear industry significantly over the past 30 or 40 years of activism. In 1974, Richard Nixon said there'd be 1,000 nuclear plants in the year 2000, and we've kept it under 120. Way too many still. There are 104 reactors now operating in the United States, but every one of them could be melting as we do this interview. And there's absolutely no place in the future for nuclear power. The Obama administration has got to come to its senses and stop this discussion of building new reactors because it
Harvey
makes
Wasserman,
no sense.
Thank you very much for joining us. He's with freepress.org, not to be confused with Bob McChesney's freepress.net. Special thanks to the documentary Containment: Life After 3 Mile Island. We also want to thank the filmmakers of Black Wave, the legacy of the Exxon Valdez, in our coverage this week of the 20th anniversary of the Exxon Valdez oil spill. And you can go to our website for more information. You can also go to blackwavethefilm.com. Democracy Now! Produced by Mike Berkshire, from producer Armata, Angelique Hammett, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Honey Massoud, Robbie Karen. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Thanks for joining us.